Before she ever assumed the title of a royal monarch, Anne Tellers of York was once a lowly sorceress, by trade at least, and one of the most valued trinkets to her was a gold ring. Well, a gold ring and a gold bracelet that she had always used to help bolster her abilities. She carried these things around with her everywhere she went, and she almost never took off the bracelet and would only remove the ring when she would wash her hands. But one day, when she finally coerced her way into the royal throne of York and assumed the title of queen, she made a special request the day before her coronation. She had that bracelet as well as that ring, as pure gold as they were, melted down and added to the jeweled crown that she would later on come to wear and be known for. As the years went by, she continued to use her crown, or at least use the special properties that she had bequeathed the crown, to spy on neighboring monarchs. She would use the crown to help her gain sight beyond sight and immeasurable clairvoyance that made her a stunning tactician on the battlefield. It allowed her to relay to her generals where and when certain allies and certain enemies would attack, and allowing them to get the upper hand nonetheless. It allowed her to spy on anyone and look to any place she desired. All she needed to do was think it, and she saw it. Well, also she had to put on the crown, but we'll get to that part later. She had long used these powers as well as the powers of restoration, conjuration, and illusion to get what she always wanted. She is the queen after all. And Queen Anne got exactly what she wanted. And on one particular day, when she stood into her mirror and placed that crown upon her head, she was met with a vision of her own death. She was met with a vision of her end, and she was met with a vision of who would do it. And it wasn't the butler this time. She saw in the mirror, as she always would prefer, her being stabbed into the back. Her blood would mix with the red of her dress, and she wouldn't even be able to tell where the blood would end and the dress would begin. She stared in the mirror longingly for what felt like an eternity to her. She dropped her crown, and that night she fled. She took off on a horse, carrying all but a few items, or at least what she could fit in her small satchel at the time, and the saddlebags of the horse. She raced across the countryside, fearing that her assassin would be right at her heels and would be prepared to impale her with a blade the moment she stopped for any moment's reprieve. She continued across the countryside for the entirety of the night. And when dawn broke, she found a moment's respite at a small inn. When she decided to rest at the inn, she removed the crown from her saddlebags and looked into a nearby mirror. She placed the crown upon her head once again. This time, she saw a woman behind her. "You are right on time," the woman said as she kept her pace towards Queen Anne. The queen turned around to meet the woman head on. She had a pocket full of salt ready in her left hand, just in case she needed to cast another spell. But the woman was seemingly friendly, and though skeptical, decided to put away the handful of salt. She dusted her hand off and met the woman's gaze with her own. "Who are you, my friend?" the queen asked begrudgingly. The woman's first response was to hold out her hand, open but gloved. "Like you just said, I'm a friend," the woman finally answered after a brief silence. And that's all I have so far in regards to the story of Queen Anne. I really like the story that I made up about this picture, and this is actually something that I need to keep doing because I stopped doing it about last year, where I would just make up stories behind the illustration, since that famous tale of a picture telling 1,000 words. But that's I'll leave it there for right now because I actually do want to develop that a little bit more. I actually may talk about it in a little bit. But so as we get on to actually coloring in this crown, I wasn't too sure what color I wanted to make it. At first I actually did think of using a gray, but in thinking about it didn't make much sense, because if she is a royal, she obviously would have a gold crown or a bejeweled crown. So I decided to just get both of them. I threw a whole bunch of jewels in it, all red, blue, and green of various shades, and that's what I really liked. I ended up picking up some watercolors from Joann's about 2 weeks ago. The same day I actually got this artboard that you see, because I needed a new artboard and my old one was raggedy, for lack of a better word, or lack of a more appropriate word. So I've been experimenting with those paints, with those Daniel Smith extra fine watercolors, as well as my Daler-Rowney watercolors, and this is actually the first piece where I decided to mix them up, and the results were honestly pretty good. There were a couple of things I actually did want to change, but throughout the piece I think it made a lot more sense to use the thicker well, they're extra fine, but to me the only difference between those is that the Daniel Smith watercolors were thicker, which again, not really a bad thing. It's pretty helpful. And once I got around to actually reusing them, they were pretty helpful in this piece. So the two colors that I actually ended up using were my cadmium red, as well as the I had three greens. I had sap green and two other greens that I can't remember the names of off the top of my head. But as you see here, that cadmium red is extremely fine, hence the extra fine. And once I laid it down, it actually looked a lot more like a gouache than a watercolor. And for all you who don't know, gouache is just a very thick or opaque watercolor. And as I kept laying it down, it was extremely helpful, and I really enjoyed the vibrant and saturated colors that I ended up getting throughout the hair. Like it was a bit more inconsistent than I wanted it to, but that's mostly because of me, because I kept adding water, because again, I'm working on coloring a bit more. So I made a couple mistakes that I'm still paying for right now. I have to tell myself that each time, but I really liked it. And as I kept layering it up, it got a little bit darker, and it mixed in with the not ink shades, but like the specify areas that I wanted to darken, and you'll actually see how I darken those later on in the piece. And once I got a desired saturation, I should say, I really enjoyed it. I actually had to pull back and stop, because I didn't want to overdo the red and waste all this watercolor, because I only had one tube of this red. So that's that. And also, one of the bigger experiments was the skin tone. I'm glad the skin tone worked the way it did. I really like it. And this lip, I had a feeling that I should have left the lip the upper lip as just one color, instead of giving her some fuller lips. But in the end, the red worked out like it was supposed to. So I am extremely grateful for that. And let's see. Oh yeah, I did forget the top part of her head. I left some tufts of hair out. That's a little funny. And just to keep going with my red, I actually gave her red fingernails. Well, nail polish on her fingernails, I should say, which helped. And then going back to touching up on the crown, this goes, let's see, am I on that air? Not yet. Okay, I still kept going. All right, so right now I am darkening the skin a little bit. Well, just a little bit. I was experimenting with that. I wanted to make sure the complements were right, at least. And while this is where I wanted to actually darken the hair. Once I darkened the hair, I started to find somewhere that I wanted to actually stay. Well, I found a comfort zone that I wanted to stay in. So I ended up keeping the darkened hair, and I kept just adding green to darken it, because properly darkening colors, you use your complementary color. So for red, it's going to be green. I almost forgot that until I, did this piece. And luckily, I've actually been reading the color mixing Bible a lot more, and I had to use that because it's been on my shelf for months and I haven't read it yet. Which is kind of dumb because I've actually, I'm trying to learn color and I didn't read the color mixing Bible, or at least not enough of it. But I'm getting back to it, and that book kind of saved this piece, and I am extremely grateful. Forever grateful, honestly. And I think my next one, because I actually going to do that, is going to be red and green too. Oh yeah, I haven't done ink splotching in a while. I think it worked. Ink splotching is just when I give some extra textured effect with black ink. On the sides, it helps frame up the character a little bit. But as I finished up, I actually realized that the pencil sketch was a bit darker than it actually should have been. I don't know how else to explain that, but yeah. And here is the inking sketch. I actually love the inking sketch because of how the shadows were mapped out. And here's just the skin with the inks laid down. I really like this one too. This actually gave me a Game of Thrones vibe. And here is the final product. I honestly loved all the stages of this piece, and sitting outside just to get the fresh air and painting this was super helpful as well. And yeah, that's kind of it. All right, so I will see you all next time, and do subscribe, like, and share the video, just in case you haven't already. And in the comments below, tell me what you think of the video and what you want to actually see next, because one of my next watercolors is going to be poison ivy. Spoiler.